About a month ago, I made a video talking about Daniel Hentschel. He's well known for his satirical comedy videos, even though at first glance, they might not seem so satirical. In that video, we covered how Daniel has a numerous inventory of different personalities. One day, he's a priest talking about how he got caught high in mass, and then the next, he is confessing to a murder.
I want it to be fully open, honest, and transparent. Yes, I have thought about killing my family before.
Now, if you haven't seen my video, we try to do a little bit of a deep dive on the entire backstory of Daniel Hentschel, uncovering a little bit of lore behind his character. But reading through the comments of that video, one commenter stuck out of the rest. I've watched his videos for a very long time, back when he did TikToks checking the temperature in different CVS's. He's been in stand-up shows, one is uploaded on YouTube I believe. The lore that he's created is insane, not to mention the fact that he has even made Instagram accounts for his side characters and populated them with photos that correspond to the YouTube vids he made later. Now, when I read this comment, I was dumbfounded to say the least. Not only did I miss the fact that Daniel used to do stand-up, but I also didn't realize that Dan made Instagram accounts for his side characters to correspond with his lore, which is why I'm here again. We're gonna do a deep dive into the true story behind Daniel Hentschel, where he talks about all the friends that he made along the way, or shall I say, the victims. We're gonna begin this entire story on this Instagram page right here, named Randall Cracker. Reading through the posts on this account gives us the idea that the owner is likely a middle-aged man, sharing some of that middle-aged humor. My wife left me months ago. That's her over there. At this age, I need glasses. Wine glasses, that is. Randall also posted this photo of his wife right here, which we will later find out to be named Susan Cracker. But then, after all of that lightheartedness, we'll take a turn for the worst, with this photo of a revolver, with the caption, "I am not a good man." Now, looking at his Instagram account alone, there isn't any context clues on why Randall would post such a thing. But digging deep into Daniel Hentschel's YouTube catalog, we find something. This video here, titled "The Family That Ruined My Life," Part 1. Now, in the opening of this video, Dan mentions that he regrets making a tweet that he made that very day.
Hi everybody. Oh God. I'm in the Angeles National Forest right now because I tweeted something earlier this morning that to be honest with you, I'm kind of starting to regret a little bit, but it's too late now. So I just decided to come out here where there's no cell service and nobody can find me and kind of wait for this to all blow over, you know, for the heat to die down, basically.
And looking at Dan's tweets that he made on the date of March 28th, the date this video is uploaded, we have one notable one right here. Why are they allowed to do this to people? And I have no recourse? Displaying an image of Dan registered as a sex offender. I can only imagine why he wanted to hide out from the public. Now, Dan intros his talk stating that this family he's going to talk about was basically the root of all of the pain he has ever felt.
When I think about all the ways that my life got terrible, and there are many, you can pretty much trace it all back to one family. The family that ruined my life. Basically, if you were to make one of those serial killer things where they, you know, connect the pictures with the red string and thumbtacks and then they write big, this is the answer. It would all connect back to this family and these 4 people.
It should also be noted when Dan is talking about his entire origin story, he starts talking about a serial killer investigation board. He also mentions how, since the story is super complex, he might need to make a part 2 to the entire story.
I want to tell this story because I think that if somebody can learn something from it, then that will be totally worth it. It's probably going to be multiple videos because it's a very long, complicated story. And I want to make sure I do it justice, kind of like how they split Dune into 2 movies because the book was so big. You know, so part 1 may not have, you know, it might be multiple parts, basically, is what I'm saying.
And he words all of this as if the part 2 to this entire series will have some pivotal information that we should be aware of. I'm mentioning this though because he never made a part 2 to the series. This is pretty much the only video that we have of him talking about the entire situation. Then he starts really rolling into the video, giving us all a trigger warning.
Oh, trigger warning also. If you're somebody who's really sensitive to men being persecuted for not doing anything wrong by schizophrenic drug addicts and media whores, then skip this video because this story that's basically the entire point of the story in a nutshell.
Basically insinuating that Dan has been falsely accused of a crime, and he's also been dealing with a lot of fake people. Quote unquote media whores.
A few years ago, back when I lived in Maryland, I used to live in Maryland and I worked at Best Buy. And I used to walk around the sales floor trying to look like I was doing something so that nobody would ask me a question. And if they did ask me a question, then I would just try to bullshit my way out of it long enough that they would eventually just do something else and get tired of what they wanted to ask me.
Now this is where he mentions our first character, Randall.
Basically, it was the people on the sales floor, and then back was the warehouse, which is where they put all the freaks. And one of the people who worked in the warehouse was named Randall Cracker.
After some rambling, he begins talking about how he got to know Randall. And by the way, I'm sorry if there's any abrupt cuts. I'm trying to cut out all of Dan's side tangents that don't connect to the story, so sorry about that.
One day, because I hated this job so much, I started smoking. I had never smoked before, but I started smoking so that I would have an excuse to not work and go outside every half hour and smoke a cigarette, basically. So I used to put some marijuana in the cigarette and mix it around with the tobacco, and I would smoke them outside in front of the store. One day I remember I was outside smoking and Randall was unloading something from the loading dock with his other buddies, and he screamed at the top of his lungs. I guess you could smell it. He screamed, "Are you smoking weed, Dan?" You know, because he was a moron. And so I yelled back, "Yes, I am. What do you want?" And he said, "Can I try some?" And so he came over and he took a little puff and he started telling me this long sob story about how he had some old person disease where he had pain for no reason. So long story short, he said, "Would you be able to give me some marijuana? Because that's the only thing that stops my pain." And I said, "Fine." So we started to get into a routine where I would go over his house after work, and you know, we would do the deed. We wouldn't do, you know what I mean. One of these times that I went over his house, his wife was home.
Dan begins detailing how he felt about Susan, how she kind of radiates bad vibes and comes across as an insane person, specifically referencing the woman who sparked the entire Kids Bop meme.
My kids can't hear me calling you a bitch.
Your window's open.
They can't hear me because they're listening to Kids Bop.
Her name was Susan Cracker. I'll never forget the first time I met her. I walked into the house and immediately it felt like I had walked into the Chernobyl reactor, because it felt like she was emitting radiation. You could just feel how crazy she was. And sometimes I think that in a cosmic sort of way, when you meet somebody sort of like love at first sight, you feel that they're going to change your life in some way. This was a negative version of that. And again, I wish that I had listened to my gut, but I didn't, because I thought I knew better.
I should also probably pitch in for a second if it's not apparent yet. Dan's character is a huge narcissist. He doesn't care about anyone unless they benefit him. He believes every negative thing that happens in his life is the doing of others, not himself. And he's kind of what you would call a stereotypical Los Angeles rat or snake. I don't know what they call them. He's a clout chaser. That's what I'll call him.
A couple of years pass. I stopped working at Best Buy. You know, Randall and I kind of keep in touch, but you know. And then the pandemic happens. Early March 2020. Everybody remembers this. I remember specifically that feeling the week that lockdown happened, and everybody thought they were gonna die, and everything was closing and nobody was going anywhere. I remember seeing all that happen and thinking, this is the perfect time to move across the country like I have always wanted to do. I had always wanted to live in Los Angeles. Ever since I was a kid, I dreamed of being a famous movie director and a famous, you know, Hollywood big shot. And I said, this is it. This is a sign from the universe that I need to do this pandemic. So I got on a plane and I immediately flew out to LA and I started my new life. And that if there's a positive to that story, that's why I'm sitting right here. So, you know, if there's any positive to COVID, it's me and my success. I fly out to Los Angeles, and one of the first weekends that I'm there, a friend of mine that I know out there throws a little bit of a party.
Dan then mentions here a friend that he knew in LA prior to moving there, and they're gonna be very important to the story later on, so we're gonna hold on to that and put it in the back of our pocket.
When I go to parties, I'm not much of a party animal. I'm kind of introverted. You know, so I like to I don't really talk to people. I sort of will just stand in a corner and lurk and watch everybody kind of like, you know, and it's like I'm in the zoo. You know, I love watching everybody and their stupid charade they put on for everybody else living their fake lives. It's fun for me because I'm just like, I cannot imagine being this dumb and being this much of a sheep. So this is exactly what was happening that night at that party. There was a girl at that party, and I say that because they are non-binary, technically. But they also use she, they pronouns, so I'm not doing anything. I'm gonna call them whatever I want.
Also, I'm assuming that Dan has a issue with his friend being non-binary, just judging off the fact that he sounds very fucking grumpy when he's talking about all of that.
Remember, she was completely wasted and it was pathetic and she was just a monster, basically. And I remember walking up to her and I said, you need to stop it right now. I didn't know her. We didn't know each other.
Okay, I'm pausing right here, not for the sake of the story, but there is a hole in the story. He says that he didn't know each other prior to going to this party. But before, he said he knew this person before moving to LA. We can probably just assume that Dan is going crazy here and losing his mind because that seems to be a running theme. But yeah, hole in the plot. Comment that in the video.
We didn't know each other, but I said, you need to stop it right now because you're fucking embarrassing me. You're embarrassing me, the fact that I was invited to this party and the fact that I know anybody here by doing this and acting the way that you are. So stop it. We get to talking very loudly, and at a certain point she drops the bombshell, which is that her dad is a programming executive at a very major network in Los Angeles. And I want to say specifically what network, because I actually recently signed a non-disclosure agreement with something, so I don't want to talk about that specifically. But point is, she would be very useful to me. So I realized I need to flip the switch and I need to use this person for what they can give me, which I now see is a lot. So I am sort of that type of person where if I lock in, I can make somebody fall in love with me in a night, and I just choose not to. But tonight I chose to do that.
Dan telling us that he signed an NDA as he's talking about their father gives me the idea that he could possibly be working for their father now. So if that's really the case, that probably means that Dan has successfully taken advantage of his friend and the connection that his friend gave him. So I'm guessing that Dan manipulated them into growing romantic feelings for him. Then suddenly he drops a name.
And we started seeing each other. Becca and I.
Becca, referring to his friend. Searching for any Beccas in Dan's following list on Instagram gives us this account right here, named Angel Becca 420. But there's no posts as of yet. Now back to the video, Dan ends this entire info dump on Becca, telling us that he's now seeing Becca actively, now in a open relationship. But then our people from earlier come back into the story. Randall and Susan. Love those people.
Randall and Susan give me a call and they say that they are also moving to Los Angeles. And I know that saying that sounds insane, but at the time, I guess mostly I just didn't care because I didn't really care about them very much. So I said, you can do whatever the hell you want. That's not going to change anything about how I live my day-to-day life at all. So fine, move out here. What the hell do I give a fuck? You know? And I instantly, anytime, they're one of those people who, when they tell me something, I instantly forget. But now, of course, again, obviously they were trying to lure me in, or this was a very carefully orchestrated thing and I played right into their hand. They move out to LA and they invite me and Becca to their housewarming party because I had sort of...
Dan then adds that he told Randall about him and Becca and how they were both together. But while mentioning all of this, he kind of lowers the significance of that statement, clearly not wanting that much to do with Becca. Now Dan then tells us that him and Becca showed up to the housewarming party. He mentions that he stayed sober for the entire event, and by the end of the party, it was very dark and everyone had gone back home, except for him, Becca, and of course Randall and Susan. They already lived there.
All of a sudden, Randall and Susan get this very strange look in their eyes. And they ask us if we want to have sex with them. And at first I thought they were joking. So I said, excuse me? And they said, yeah, we're kind of, you know, our marriage is, I don't know, falling apart and We want to kind of spice things up a little bit. And I almost threw up right then and there. I jumped off of the patio furniture and I ran inside into the bathroom and I puked my guts out. And I said, fuck you guys. You're disgusting pigs. I'm getting out of here. Another mistake because I left Becca there. God knows what they did. And I have a feeling that whatever happened that night would end up being extremely pivotal in the events that followed.
Now, after that night, Dan tells us that Randall repeatedly tried to get in contact with Dan, profusely apologizing to him for making him uncomfortable.
Since the party incident, Randall had kind of been sending me, you know, saying like, I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable. I really value your friendship. Can we just forget that this ever happened? I ignored him every time because he crossed a line that he cannot uncross.
Randall mentions how he values Dan's friendship and just wants to talk. But Dan, being Dan, ignores every single call and message Randall sends him, not wanting anything to do with him. Then when Randall finally realized that he lost a friend, he tells Dan this.
But he would not let up, and eventually one night he sent me a very long text message about how he was going on vacation and that I wouldn't see him again, basically. So I said, well, again, why do I give a fuck? Do whatever you want. And I go on Instagram and I see that Randall, you know, before that, he had kind of just posted stupid boomer stuff. So like comics that aren't funny and, yeah, I don't know, stuff like that. Racist memes. And that night, he posted something that was very, very different from anything else that he had ever posted. Because it was a picture of a revolver on his car seat. And I recognized his car seat. And it was night in the picture, it was nighttime. And the caption was something like, I'm not a good person, basically. Now this is going to be one of many social media posts that play a role in this story because a lot of this story starts to unfold through social media posts and through Instagram posts.
Daniel clearly has no remorse for what happened, even using this as an opportunity to promote his Patreon.
You can find all of these on my Patreon. Basically, when all of this occurred, the district attorney's office collected data from everybody's phone and they created a case file called the Cracker case file of everything that happened. So you can go back and see every single one of the social media posts that I referenced in the story. And you can see it play out through social media posts chronologically.
Trying to rake in some of that internet cash. Now the next day, Daniel gets a call from Randall's wife, Susan.
Next day, I'm in the McDonald's drive-thru. I get a call from Susan Cracker. She tells me she's crying hysterically. And she says, Dan, I can't find Randall. He's gone. His car is missing. His gun is missing. And I hang up immediately because I can't deal with this right now. So then I call Becca. I beep boop and I say, Becca, you need to call Susan and deal with this crap because she's doing something going on and I need to put you on cracker duty, basically.
So Becca is on quote unquote cracker duty, whatever that means. They have to deal with the entire situation, I guess. And as for Dan, he distances himself as far as he possibly can from this part of the story. He says that everything that happened after this point had nothing to do with him at all.
So I guess she did that. I don't know. The rest of the story played out from my perspective and I was completely not focused on that. I was at the hospital with my partner. Maybe this is where I should leave off because this is kind of, God, again, it's such a long story. I don't know if it's gonna be 3 or 4 fucking videos, but we'll see.
He ended the video off giving us the idea that he would make a part 2 to this entire story, but he never did. So we'll have to continue the entire story via Instagram posts. Now, like any loss, Susan was struggling. She started posting on Randall's account to try to get the word out that he was missing, posting missing posters of her husband and even a microwavable meal. I get it, we all mourn loss differently, that's understandable. The caption of this post reads like this: accepting that my husband is probably never coming back has been incredibly difficult. Randall made my life worth living, and without him, I can barely get out of bed, much less cook a meal for myself. When I am able to keep something down, Michelina's microwavable personal meals are perfect. I love the wheels on cheese, though I hesitate to say it like that because I have mostly forgotten what love is. Hashtag Michelina's, hashtag sponsored. Now this is kind of a smack in the face to anyone who had sympathy for Susan. I'm kinda understanding the crazy vibes Daniel was talking about. Sure, making a social media post mourning about a significant loss like that, sure, that's normal, but talking about it with a sponsor for a company, like It's very insincere. Guys, my entire family just died in a giant fiery bus accident in the border of Brazil. I'm really sad right now. Also, this entire video is sponsored by NordVPN. Dan mentioned earlier that Susan and Randall's marriage were kind of on the brink of failure. So it's possible that she could just be moving on very quickly. Regardless, I know for a fact that she isn't moving on completely, because a few days later, Susan made this post here. Kids, let's play 20 questions. Where was internet celebrity Dan Hentschel the night my husband disappeared? I believe the reason why Susan is now suspecting Dan of murdering, or at the very least, making her husband go missing, is because of Dan rejecting their sexual offers. Now, this strategy of Susan targeting Dan publicly got his attention, because I'm assuming Dan A didn't want to lose any followers, but I'm also thinking that he didn't want to lose the deal that he may or may not have signed with Becca's father. Believe it or not, murder allegations don't really mix well with social media. So then Dan began threatening Susan privately, leading Susan to put Dan on blast and post this right here.
Pick up the phone! If you don't pick up this phone, it'll be the last chance you get to pick up anything again.
Fearing for my life, deranged maniac Dan Hentschel. Then the next day, a missing poster for Susan Cracker was posted onto the account. Detectives from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department are seeking assistance locating missing person Susan Cracker. The two images on the right were posted to Susan's Facebook between 3:30 and 4 p.m. They appear to be taken from the trunk of a car, with hair believed to be Susan's. Authorities are looking for assistance to identify the unknown male in this photo, who is believed to be responsible for her disappearance. Then we have another post to the Instagram. Dan Hentschel police interview transcript released. How is this not enough for an arrest? And it reads like this. So the voicemail. Would you agree you sound pretty upset? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, at the time, I was pretty upset. Yeah, fine. But you have to understand, I was reacting to her saying, did you see what she had been posting on social media? What was she posting? Huh. She had spent the whole day, and like weeks before that, well, okay. Specifically what set me off in that voicemail was the post where she had said like, Dan Hentschel. Where was Dan Hentschel the night my husband was killed? Why can't he say where he was? Basically insinuating I had done something. Killed? What? Sorry, it's just, you said the night her husband was killed. You're talking about her husband that went missing? Missing. Fine, whatever. Did I say that? I mean, if you want to get into semantics, if you were to pick apart my words, fine. Sorry, I'm nervous. I don't normally have people breathing down my neck like this. I'm probably gonna say a couple things wrong. We're just talking. You are free to leave at any time you like. We don't want to make you uncomfortable. If we're making you uncomfortable, you're free to leave. We'll step out, we can take a break, if that's what you want. Now, clearly by the looks of this transcript, Dan is on the edge of a breakdown. He even makes a slip up referring to her husband as dead or killed, pretty much telling us that Dan probably knows a little bit more than we know. Now, the next post on this account is a video of Dan Hentschel that is now deleted, addressing all of the hot water that he found himself in.
I have worked so hard to get to where I am right now, and I feel like my career is about to explode. So the idea that that would get ruined for me over some random woman, I mean, I don't mean to say it like that, but you know what I mean? But
obviously not admitting guilt, at least not verbally, because Dan deleted the post. That's kind of an admission of guilt. Then after that, we get another post. Another day from inaction of the LAPD, and no consequences for the con artist Dan Hentschel. Now, a big question right now is who could possibly be creating these posts? Randall is dead, and Susan is missing, but luckily the next post is going to answer our question. A statement from Randy Jr. from the Cracker Foundation. I never thought I'd have to imagine a world without my parents. It's shaken me to my core. So I want to apologize sincerely for any posts from this account that I didn't quite think through in the midst of my grief. In partnership with Viral Vista Media, we're happy to announce the Cracker Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising awareness about Sue and Randall's disappearance so we can bring them home. In addition to other relevant topics Sue and Randall would have enjoyed, we look forward to bring a bright future. Now let's find my parents. Randall Jr. So their son is now running the Instagram page. Now something to note is that Randy partnered with a media group called Viral Vista Media, but searching for that specific name led me to nothing. I didn't find anything, but that didn't stop me. I did a little bit more sleuthing around the internet and came across this page right here called Vivid Viral Media Group. This page has 2 posts, and both of these posts seem to be photo shoots. One specifically for a fast food chain called Carl's Jr., which legally, I think I have to say this, they are not affiliated with the story. But this is gonna explain why later on in the story we start seeing Carl's Jr. sponsored posts on the Cracker's Instagram page. Now back to Randall's account, the next few posts read like this. The last thing Sue Cracker said before she disappeared. I'll be right back. A handsome Randall Jr. graduating high school. Randy Jr. in action on the field. And then we get this right here. Monster Angus Thick Burger. Randall's order at his favorite restaurant, Carl's Jr. It's pretty odd how this post is on a page for spreading awareness to Randy's missing parents, which is why I actually don't think Randy chose personally to sponsor these posts. Instead, I actually think that this is his media agency pushing these sponsorships onto Randy. Whether that benefits him or not is still up to debate. He might have just signed a really crappy deal, but regardless, it's all just a little bit odd. Now the next post is where things start to pick up a lot more. Randall's body has been found in Angeles National Forest. The LAPD have positively identified human remains found off Azillo Canton Road as Randall Cracker Sr. This is a very sad day for our family as we await further details. Randy Jr. with a small Carl's Jr. tag over top of this very sad post. But it seems like that little small tag didn't convert to enough sales for Carl's Jr. because this is their next post. Randall's injuries were self-inflicted. An autopsy by Los Angeles medical examiner has determined Randall's injuries were self-inflicted. We are devastated to learn about the discovery of Randall's body and apparent cause of death. As our family processes the immense loss of a beloved husband and father, we are excited to try the new salted caramel pretzel shake from Carl's Jr. Okay, the paid advertising is getting a bit much now. We got some really tragic news and they're like, oh yeah, buy this shake. It's a lot. So for the sake of the story, I'm just gonna try to ignore it. But then suddenly we get a bombshell of a post from Randall's Instagram and also Vivid Viral Media's account as well. Missing. Have you seen him? Randall Cracker Jr. And the media group that Randall signed to made a statement on him going missing. A client of ours sadly has gone missing. Not our most creative work, but missing posters favor function over fashion. Now back to Randall's account, we get this update on the investigation. Rebecca Jankowiski has confessed to triple homicide. Jankowiski was taken into custody after confessing to kidnapping and murdering the 3 missing Cracker family members Saturday morning. Still waiting on more details. It's really ramping up now. Then on September 11th, we get a bombshell leaked. Dan Hentschel's full letter to Judge Norbert in support of Rebecca Jankowiski. My name is Daniel Hentschel, though I'm sure I need no introduction. Even if you don't recognize my name, you would likely recognize my face. I am writing this letter on behalf of my friend, Rebecca Jankowiski. As the highest profile person who knows Becca, I feel it is my civic duty to advocate for her in light of her recent confession to the 3 Cracker murders. Becca was one of my first friends in Los Angeles. We met at a party, during which everyone was consuming drugs and alcohol, except me. She saw that I wasn't enjoying myself amongst the ruckus, and though she was heavily inebriated by several substances, she still had the cognitive ability to understand the social dynamics of the situation, which I found to be an impressive testament to her character. She has always been a friend to me when I needed it the most. One evening, I was upset by a comment on social media someone had left me where they accused me of not being funny. She was quick to distract me by asking if I knew anywhere she could buy a unregistered gun. This completely took my mind off my own situation, despite the fact that she probably didn't even know I was upset about anything at all. That's just the type of character she was. This is even more remarkable when you consider her turbulent upbringing as a child. Almost all of her pets died, with no one able to identify the cause. She was relentlessly made fun of for wetting the bed regularly well into adolescence. She never had a place to call home as a child, as every house her family tried to move into burnt down, and they lived in a fusionately nomadic lifestyle. Despite all of this, nothing that happened to her ever seemed to affect her whatsoever. She was always strong in the face of adversity. Things you would expect to upset a normal person left her completely unfazed. Not only was she remarkably tenacious when faced with her own pain or the pain of others, she often sought out both of those things. I was always in disbelief how a person could be so courageous. I hope this letter helped you understand the Becca I knew and loved. Daniel Hentschel. Now, after reading Becca's backstory, there was a lot to unpack. Now, I'm assuming when Dan told Becca to take care of things when talking about Susan crying profusely, I'm assuming Becca resorted to the easiest option, which was probably violence. This would make sense too, just because Becca's backstory sounds like something you would hear out of a serial killer's documentary. Also, Daniel mentions how none of those tragedies seem to affect Becca very much. Almost like Becca has a similar personality to Dan, narcissistic and honestly just evil. Now, going into Becca's Instagram page, we start seeing another side of the story. Almost like Becca realized that Dan was just using them as an scapegoat. Dan Hentschel is not invincible. I'm ready to tell the world who he really is. Remember this Dan Hentschel? In 2018, Daniel Hentschel, who is white, participated in several offensive ads for a local Mexican restaurant. He now preaches progressive values to his internet fans, while meanwhile he tries to bury this from public knowledge. Then we see the last post from Becca. Y'all, I'm worried about Dan. He is alive at least. I know we have our differences, but I'm putting all of that to the side because I wouldn't want to see even my worst enemy suffer like he is. I know him and I can feel something is wrong, but he won't talk to me. Please let him know that he is cared about, and at the end of the days, that's all that matters. Now, after this post, back on Randall's account, we see this. Becca has been given the death penalty. The jury reached their unanimous verdict in 2 hours. It will be the first time the death penalty has been used in California since 2006 and requires a special constitutional exemption from Governor Gavin Newsom. And well, it's Instagram, so we can see the accounts that liked this post. And one of the accounts that liked this post stands out quite a bit. Here we have Roger. Looking at their posts gives us the idea that they are probably a Silicon Valley worker, I guess. Not getting involved with drama. I left LA for a reason. In San Francisco, making the future happen and not worried about my past. Then the post after this, we have a conversation between Roger and Dan. I knew you were a sick fuck, but this is a new low, even for you. If you are somehow able to sleep at night in your life on this earth, know that hell will be cold and lonely. Wow, Roger, beautiful. How long did it take you to write all of that? Go build an app where you can suck your own dick. Silicon Valley trash. Then the next post, we see Roger replying to one of Dan's Twitter posts. Recognize this, Daniel Hentschel, when you jokingly posted how to make cyanide, a poison that no coroner would look for in an autopsy unless they had a reason to suspect it was there? Now, it's clear that Roger strongly dislikes Dan, and it's also very clear that Roger is very Silicon Valley-esque, just judging by the fact that he lives in San Francisco and Dan called him Silicon Valley trash. Now, a callback from earlier was that Becca's father was some top-notch Silicon Valley guy, so this leads me to think that Roger is Becca's father. But not only that, I also think Roger owns the media company Vivid Viral Media, which is why he's so upset at Dan for allegedly murdering a family and putting the company in jeopardy. So they resorted to using Becca as a cover-up. But it's very odd how Roger liked to post announcing that Becca is being given the death penalty. It's odd. Unless Roger was aware that Becca was possibly burning down all of their homes that they would move into and killing all of the family pets. That would give Roger a reason to want to cut Becca out of his life. Now things are beginning to look up for the family, as Susan Cracker was found alive, announced by this Instagram post right here. But the next post is a bit grim. Susan Cracker has been in a coma since she was discovered alive last week. As there is no remaining family members to decide, we want to know your thoughts. Should we mercifully end her suffering, or wait around to see if she improves? And looking at the comments, people seem to not really like Susan. Majority of them wanting her to be euthanized, and a small selection select few wanting to keep her alive for the sake of her suffering more. That's crazy. Now, before Becca gets given the death penalty, the Cracker Foundation makes this post here, announcing that Becca is releasing a memoir on their involvement in the Cracker case, possibly the true story behind it all, adding that Daniel Hentschel is very worried about this memoir's release. It all eventually comes crashing down with this now deleted video of Daniel Hentschel getting into a car, driving for around 20 minutes, not saying a word. He eventually parks somewhere and pulls out an axe and leaves his car for a few minutes. Coming back, covered in blood. So, did Dan really do it? Yes. Yes, he did. And thank you so much to my channel members for supporting the channel. You guys are the best. Hopefully I'm not messing up any of your names. We have Food History, Alivs, who is an Ally V2, I hope I said your name right, For the Funny, who is also an Ally V2, Sick, Lenodi, Smiley Toad, The Crabman, Ral, Autumn, Trixmates, who is also an Ally V2, cool, and My Music. We also have Turtle as well. They joined like immediately after I recorded this, so that was kind of rude of you, Turtle, but thank you. Thank you all so much for becoming allies of the channel. You guys are goated. I just said goated. Anyways, if you want to get to know Dan a little bit more as a person and kind of learn more about his origin story and all of the videos he's posted, go ahead and watch this video right here where I uncover the entire history of Daniel Hentschel, at least most of it. I guess there's still a lot missing, like he did comedy. I missed that. Thanks for 20K.